It's 10:30 on Thursday, the 29th of April, and you're watching a UTV Live Tonight election special. Good evening, I'm Jim Dougal. Tonight we're looking at the battle for the vote in the Unionist stronghold of North Antrim. How do you answer that question, Jim Allister? Question about drugs and asthma.
Well, of course, there are many social problems in Ballymena which need to be addressed. I think one of the underlying difficulties in the addressing of them is the manner in which the police service has been allowed to be run down. Since the days of Patton, we have seen the police presence reduce. We have seen numerous local police stations closed, and members of the policing board, like Mr Paisley, vote for that in terms of closures, and all of that has reduced the police presence in respect of the whole range of crime, and that is something which concerns a lot of people, particularly elderly people in the community. But it is right, North Antrim does need a lot of help and guidance from its MP, and therefore, first and foremost, it needs a full-time MP. Sadly, to date, we've had an MP taking the full-time salary for a part-time job and turning up for only 18% of the votes. That has to change.
Where do you stand on this, Jim Allister?
Well, I think we have to face facts. There has been a 46% rise in unemployment in North Antrim in the last year. Particularly affected is Ballymena. Yes, we're blessed to have a number of key major employers like Michelin and Wrightbus and O'Kane's and those, and we must cherish and protect those jobs. But we do need to build a new employment base, and we will build that, I believe, through the attachment and encouragement of small local industry. Remembering Wrightbus, for example, started out as a small workshop. Today employs hundreds upon hundreds of people and is a world leader. It's by the encouragement of small industry, by trying to break the bind of bureaucracy on small industry. You know, 10-12% of our GDP is going on companies having to deal with bureaucracy, a lot of which comes from Europe. All of that needs to be addressed, and we need to get hands-on encouragement.
But how are you going to address it? How are you going to do that when there's less money going around, proposals on tax and all the rest of it? It's going to mean there's no money.
By making sure that the money that is there is properly spent. Take Invest NI. They have far too much a focus on getting in call centres, which aren't really substantial lasting jobs, rather than encouraging the small, medium-sized local employer who will stick with it, who will have a loyalty to the community, and who have given that help to germinate growth, will build upon it for the good and long-term benefit.
Okay, can I just stop you there, I have to take a break, but there's a lot. Welcome back to the North Antrim debate, a UTV Live Tonight special. Now, most people seem to think that this battle in North Antrim is between two people, you, Jim Allister, and you, Ian Paisley. Jim Allister,
instead of just throwing mud at people.
Are you throwing mud at him?
No,
and his father?
No, the only weapon I have and the only weapon I want and need against Ian Paisley Jr. is the truth, and I tell you that's more than enough. Because the people of North Antrim, yes, they are looking for an end to the overbearing Paisley dynasty. This is the man who his own colleague Nigel Dodds asked the question of, on what planet is he living, when he proposed that when widows and orphans were trying to get compensation from Gaddafi, what was Mr Paisley doing? He was approving the sending of PSNI officers to train Gaddafi's militia. This is the Mr Paisley who, when he went to St Andrews, thought it right to waste valuable negotiating leverage by promoting pet projects for his developer friends with the Prime Minister. This is the Mr Paisley whose judgment has been flawed at every turn.
Judgment, can I move on? Jim Allister, the British government, Labour government, Conservative government, backed by the Liberal Democrats, are in full support of what's happening in Northern Ireland. They're in full support of what's happening in Stormont. How are you and they spent years putting it together. How are you going to persuade them to turn the clock back?
It's not about turning the clock back. It's about actually getting progress, because what we have is not working. The terrorist-inclusive mandatory coalition that we have is miserably failing on every front. Take education, which has been mentioned. Every house I go to, people are in despair about the chaos brought to education, about the fact that Ruan has been able and permitted to rampage through education utterly unfettered, and brought her dogma of destruction to it. So that is one of the products, indeed one of the most telling products of a failed Stormont. I want a working Stormont. How do we get that? How do we get that? We get that by attaching ourselves to the basics of democracy.
But you want one that Sinn Féin will not be in government in?
I do not want terrorists in government. I want to get to a system where the people have the right to vote a party out of government and a right to have an opposition. This is not North Korea, yet the citizens of Northern Ireland have no right to vote a party out of government, no right to have an opposition. We should have an assembly election. No party is big enough to form a government on its own. Those who can agree what to do about education, health, housing, they form the government. Those who can't form the opposition, and then you can change your government as you progress, and you can get stable, workable government.
Who are you going to share power with, by the way?
I would share power with anyone but terrorists. I would seek to persuade unionists and nationalists. I'm not opposed to shared government. I'm utterly opposed to terrorists in government. And what I want to do is get workable, durable devolution. If Sinn Féin are only Democrats, so long as they're in government, then they're not Democrats
Ian Paisley
at all.